Hello guys, welcome to my new video, and today we'll be looking at Mythic Plus. This is going to be a purely discussion video, looking at multiple things to do with Mythic Plus in BFA. First of all, you notice there's no green screen here. There's a new setup, and there hasn't been a video for me for the last week. I've been extremely busy with moving. This is not even the final place that I'm staying in. This is kind of like I'm staying at my parents' place for a couple of days until I move into my new place, so it's been hectic all around. I have been very busy, so I do apologize for the lack of videos and lack of streams in the last week, but hopefully in the next couple of days everything's going to go back to normal. I have the normal setup going, but in the last week I've not been out of the loop in terms of what's happening with BFA, what's happening with patch 8.1, and a lot of people, because BFA has been out for a couple of months now, they've been talking about Mythic Plus. There's been a lot of talk about how Mythic Plus differentiates between Mythic Plus and Legion. So in this video we'll be talking about the differences between the two. We'll be talking about seasonal affixes Infested. We'll be talking about the new affix that's coming out, Reaping, which has not really been discussed a lot because it, the pure focus of what it does has not been released yet. But there's been speculations, and some of the speculations seem, we'll see if you can guess the right speculation. We'll be talking about that. We'll be talking about tools in Mythic Plus that have become quintessential to some extent, whether you like it or not. We'll be talking about rated IO score, and after that we'll be talking about the class balance and the specific specs that have been extremely strong in patch 8.01 and how that might change in 8.1, because a lot of the classes have received Mythic Plus balancing specifically for how they perform in Mythic Plus, and we'll look at that. So first of all, let's look at the difference between Legion and BFA. Now, if you played in Legion, you'll know that Mythic Plus was very different. Blizzard has shifted away from this one-shot mechanics that were happening in Legion, especially on high tyrannical bosses. It was not uncommon to see a boss doing unavoidable damage like every 20, every 30 seconds that would kill the whole party, and if you don't have personal cooldowns, if you don't have your healer having some, trinkets that would shield you, and you have to call out for them at the right times, if you didn't do that, you'd probably get one shot and the whole party will wipe. And that was the deal for a lot of Mythic Plus. Now, in terms of healing was different in Legion. It was quite a few abilities would topple people straight away. In BFA it's a bit different, so that's why it was kind of weird to see Grievous like last week or something. In terms of Mythic affixes, Grievous was doing quite a lot of damage over time, but healing was not the same, so I felt Grievous was a little bit overtuned. Some classes were stronger at it and things like that, but overall a lot of things have changed. One-shot mechanics in Legion, and there's not many one-shot mechanics happening in BFA right now. Even if you're doing a high-level tyrannical key, there is not a lot of unavoidable damage that will kill you outright. It's more about coordination, it's more about planning your route, and tools like meta dungeon tools have become so popular right now. I think for every high key that I've done, and I poke a lot of keys, every poke tank, or not even a tank, most of the group will have this tool, and they'll map out the dungeons, they'll map out the mobs that they need, because it seems that over time in BFA it's more about coordination, it's more about which trash packs you're going to pull, how you're going to handle them, how many you're going to pull, and things like that. It's not about, personal survivability. Don't get me wrong, personal cooldowns are still the best way to mitigate the raid damage or the party's damage, but they're not as important or life-saving as they used to be in Legion. And a lot of people disagree on whether that's good or bad, and quite a few people don't like the BFA Mythic Plus mainly because it has become harder to poke. And this is my opinion on this. A lot of pugs have been failing. A lot of pugs have been failing trying to get the plus 10 keys. It's been harder and harder to find decent pugs who can interrupt right, who know the routes, who know how to handle the trash and things like that, especially when affixes change. And I feel it's been, even though there's not that many one-shot mechanics, there's a lot more coordination needed, and that's partly true because, mass AoE stuns have been pruned, a lot of the abilities have been pruned and things like that. Hunters don't have battle reses anymore. I've been in plenty groups which didn't have a battle res at all, and it couldn't really optimize the perfect setup, even for the lower keys. And all of a sudden I'm finding pugs to be harder with the keys below 10. Now I feel if you do find a group that's able to interrupt, knows the route, they are decently experienced players, you will have an easier time pushing keys to some extent, because all of a sudden The one-shot mechanics are not there. It's more about optimizing your cooldowns. When do you use your cooldowns? How many trash packs do you pull? Can your healer handle, like, 3 trash packs? Can your healer handle 1 trash pack? And to some extent, and this is mainly specifically to healers in general, I feel that healers with affixes that are not that healing intensive, so anything that's not grievous, you can, or the role of a healer has shifted even more into someone who can provide DPS, off-spec DPS, because let's say you're a Resto Druid, let's say you're any other healer, every healer is capable of dealing damage, and I feel a lot of the affixes with good groups do not output that much damage. There's not that much healing to be done once you feel comfortable with a specific group that you're on, and all of a sudden, because there's no one-shot mechanics, you kind of required, you want to help out the group with the damage, and you kind of need to do that because it's all about finishing the key in time and maximizing your damage. So a lot of that, again, I'll go back to Resto Druids, a lot of Resto Druids will be using kitty DPS, they'll be optimizing talents that are to do with or providing the highest uptime in your kitty form so you can DPS more and heal less. And it seems like there's been more pushing, and this is for the highest keys possible, for healers to do more damage. This meta has existed in Legion. This was the same in Legion, but I feel it's even more important to do that right now in BFA. You can reach this kind of healing cap where you feel, I have enough gear, my gear is high enough to heal any situation, I need to kind of optimize my DPS. And I know quite a few people or quite a few healers don't really like to heal, don't really like to DPS as healers. But again, this is only really relevant to the highest keys. We're talking about 12s, 13s, 15s, 16s, 17s, whatever. And we're talking about specific affixes which don't really require a lot of healing. If you're doing Grievous, you most likely won't have that much time to DPS because Grievous feels extremely punishing for healers if you let people keep dropping lower and lower. So let's look at some of the infested or seasonal affixes, and that is infested. Like I mentioned before, I felt pugging felt harder, and that's purely also to the fact that infested is there, and infested is more of a mechanic that's quite trivial but can become really hard if people don't pay attention to it. If you don't stun them, if you don't slow them, if you don't focus them, all of a sudden an easy enough key can become quite hard. So I feel there's been more emphasis placed on pugs to coordinate and play together as a team, and all of a sudden pugging keys have become much harder. This is what I've experienced, and I've been pugging quite a lot. I've been pugging lower keys and I've been pugging higher keys. And the higher keys that I pug, the easier they become. That's what I've experienced over the many Mythic Plus dungeons. So the new affix is coming out in 8.1, which we don't really know what's going to be. But non-boss enemies are empowered by Bosandi and personally seek vengeance for Beyond the Grave. And there was a really nice comment by the guy here, who I feel might have nailed this affix. Sunken temple mechanics where mobs that would turn into ghosts when killed, the ghosts would then chase someone, and if they touch you they would often one-shot you. And I honestly feel this is going to be a prediction thing. I honestly feel this guy got it. I feel there's going to be mobs, ghosts that spawn after the mobs are killed, non-elite mobs, and they will chase you, and if they catch you, you'll get one shot. I honestly feel this is what they're going to try and do. So how do I feel about these seasonal affixes? I feel infested is, I don't dislike infested because I feel it adds additional communication, and I mentioned if you poke this can be painful, but if you don't poke or if you find good group, this can be almost trivial. I am a little bit disappointed by the lack of new affixes because I feel the affixes that they used before, like Grievous, Bursting and things like that, I feel they could come up with some of the new ones. I don't feel it's going to require that much time and things like that. I would like to see new affixes being brought in other than the seasonal affix. It's only the seasonal affix lasts a couple of months, and you can get bored of it to some extent. So I do feel there should be new affixes coming in. If I talk about Radar.io, or if you talk about the tools, and this is again going to be a highly contested or highly differentiated views in terms of, is Radar.io needed? Is Radar.io a good thing or a bad thing? At the end of the day, it is a tool. At the end of the day, people will hate it because the people who have, let's say, they did not get the high score at the start, it's kind of, you're stuck in this like rat race. If you didn't get a high score at the start, or if you didn't do dungeons at the start of the release, it'll be hard for you to get into higher dungeons. And if you don't get into higher dungeons, you will not get higher Mythic Plus score. So all of a sudden, your Radar.io score will be stuck, and there's no way of you to get out of it other than getting a boost group, getting a guild group, or just somehow getting a hierarchy and getting someone else to boost it for you. So all of a sudden, rated.io can feel like a trap. But at the same time, statistically speaking, if you are creating a group, you'll most likely have better success of that dungeon if you invite people with higher score. That's what I've experienced over the time. So at the end of the day, it's a tool that some people will hate, some people will like, but I feel it is somewhat required. And I honestly feel that rated.io is responsible for a lot of players either quitting the game or playing the game. And why do I say that? Because a lot of people will be discouraged by the lack of invites that they get, and a lot of people will chase this rated.io score. They'll see like, I'm 1200, I'm 1000 IO score, I want to build it, I want to get better rated.io, I'm going to keep doing dungeons, I'm going to keep trying to push. And I feel there's a lot of people in World of Warcraft right now that are playing the game just to get their scores up. It's almost an addiction to some sort. They want to get that higher score, they want to push for that, they want to push themselves, and it's a third-party tool that kind of keeps you playing, which is very interesting because I know a lot of people who are like that. So at the end of the video, I want to look at some of the class balances and how that's going to change. There's a lot of different changes that are happening with patch 8.1 and how they're going to be affecting classes. So this is the overall class population of all the tanks, DPS, healers for patch 8.01 and the popularity. You'll notice that things like Assassination Rogues, Discipline Priests, Blood DKs, Frost Mages, Affliction Warlocks, Mistweavers, Resto Druids, and Balance Druids, Balance and Resto Druids, and Vengeance or Havoc Demon Hunters are extremely popular for keys that are really, really high, and that's level 15 and up. If you look at the tank balance, you'll notice that the Blood DKs have been very, very dominant, and that is going to change. There has been a lot of tank changes in patch 8.1. You'll notice that Blood DKs to some extent have been nerfed. Brewmasters to some extent have also been nerfed if you have a closer look as well. So they mentioned this before. Blizzard has mentioned before that they wanted to nerf Blood DKs, they wanted to nerf Brewmaster Monks. I feel Brewmaster Monks, this nerf, they didn't need a nerf for 5-mans because they were not overpowered. Blood DKs to some extent were extremely strong, but we're going to be talking about nerfs that will affect class fantasy to some extent. Blood DKs are really powerful. It's not only because, it's mainly because of what they provide. Blood DKs are all about self-healing. Self-healing is what makes Blood DKs. And if you nerf, I mean, if you remove self-healing to some extent, if you remove Stagger for Brewmaster Monks, are they Brewmasters or are they Blood DKs still? Because they will feel very generic. I am against generic classes. I actually prefer each class feel unique, have different buffs, bring something different. When I play my Restoration Druid, I love being able to huddle people, go into my kitty DPS and, you know, put bleeds and things like that. I love that kind of play style. And I love that they bring like Orsak Vortex, they bring different things. And I really like unique classes, but to some extent, unique classes bring a lot of issues in terms of class balance, because all of a sudden it becomes really hard to balance. Like for example, Blood DKs who provide a lot of self-healing, and self-healing no matter what is extremely strong in 5-man dungeons, because the healer doesn't have to heal a tank, they can focus on someone else, they can focus on DPS and things like that, and that's always been true. And the same thing with Brewmaster Monks. Stagger mechanic just works amazing for raids, for 5-mans and raids, but it's extremely strong for raids when you're undergeared and you're pushing that high mythic world for a skill. So it's really hard to balance classes. That's what I'm kind of saying, without losing that class uniqueness. And I am all about having or feeling each class feeling unique. I don't want every class to be the same. If you're playing any DPS class, you're just doing numbers but in a different way. I want different abilities. For example, if you look at DPS, you'll notice that Assassination Rogues, or actually rogues in general, are very strong. And one of the reasons why rogues are so strong, it's also because they bring Shroud of Concealment. And imagine if multiple specs would bring Shroud of Concealment, all of a sudden that class uniqueness is kind of disappearing. To some extent, Frost Mages have been really strong, and Frost Mages are all about that slow. And it's actually really interesting because today there has been a lot of nerfs happening to Frost Mages in terms of the slow that they provide. Blizzard, instead of providing a 15-second slow, now provides 1.5 second slow. If you look at the Frostball slow, it's been from 15 seconds to 8 seconds. Frozen Orb from 15 seconds to 3 seconds. So the slow has been directly nerfed just today. And Frost Mages, one of the best thing about Frost Mages is not really their damage. The damage is pretty good, but it's not groundbreaking, but it's their control, their mob control, the way that they control infested mobs was extremely strong. And now with the new affix, with the reduction in slows, we'll have to see how Frost Mages are going to deal with it. You have to keep in mind the frost damage has also been nerfed, has been buffed. It used to be -24, it's now -22, so there was a slight buff as well. Keep that in mind. We'll see how that's going to work out. Again, you'll see Affliction Warlocks being extremely strong. Affliction Warlocks brings things like Hellstones, you know, Demonic Gates, which can provide some really good skips. And they have been very popular to the same extent. Balanced Druids, the way you deal AoE damage, they deal damage overall has been always strong from Legion to BFA. And overall, probably one of the strongest classes or strongest DPS classes I feel are probably Havoc Demon Hunters, considering that Havoc Demon Hunters, if you're a Havoc Demon Hunter main, you'll know that the rotation and things like that is not overly difficult. I mean, not... When I say not overly difficult, a lot of the specs in World of Warcraft have been simplified, but I feel Havoc Demon Hunters, the amount of damage they provide, the amount of utility that they provide, mass AoE stun, they have the raid buff as well, that increases 5% magic damage, they have offensive dispel, and crazy damage. They've been one of the strongest classes in general, probably the strongest class right now. If you're someone new who's coming into World of Warcraft, you can't go wrong with Havoc Demon Hunter. They'll be needed in raids, mainly a lot of that is to do with their, you know, raid buff that they provide, and they'll be really strong in Firemans. And Blizzard has to some extent looked at that, and they have nerfed it. They have nerfed I-Beam a little bit. We'll have to see how big that nerf is going to be. I haven't looked at the pure numbers, but they have looked at Havoc, and Blizzard has decided they're a little bit strong. Now, I'm not all about the nerfs. I don't want to see all these classes getting nerfs. I would prefer other classes getting buffed or getting something unique, or, you know, specific spells or abilities that make the class unique being introduced. But I don't think Blizzard is going to do that, because it's always easier for Blizzard to nerf a class that's being overperforming, to nerf them by a couple of percent and bring them back in line with everybody else, even though the other classes, you know, might need something unique happening to them. So there's different ways to go about doing this. If you look at healers, healer balance has been actually probably the best in terms of Mythic Plus when you compare it to Legion. I feel 4 of the 6 specs have been really strong, with Discipline, with Holy Paladins, with Mistweavers, with Resto Druids being really strong. Of course, Holy Priests are not really represented here that much, because if you're playing a priest, you most likely will go Discipline. You have that option of going as Discipline and doing a lot of damage in Mythic Plus dungeons. And Resto Shamans have probably been the most underperforming healer. They've been buffed like I think 3 or 4 times now. They are climbing, but the perception, the community perception of Resto Shamans still exists. Resto Shamans are still viewed as the, oh, I don't know if I want to bring a Resto Shaman in Mythic Plus. So there is going to be quite a few changes for Restoration Shamans happening in 8.1, mainly with Chain Heal. Chain Heal is going to be inherently by default become a stronger spell, and you'll try and use Chain Heal when there's AoE healing needed, regardless of what your tier 100 talent is, and High Tide has been changed. So overall, we'll have to see how these Resto Shaman changes are going to affect Shamans. I mean, this is most likely a direct buff in raiding scenarios. In Firemans, I don't think Blizzard intended to focus on Firemans purely with this change, but we'll see how this is going to affect Firemans. And I'm definitely most likely going to try out the Resto Shaman. I'm going to see how Resto Shamans are going to perform in Firemans and raids, because Resto Shamans do have a lot of utility they provide. They're the only healer that provides a interruptibility and things like that, on top of tons of other utility. So overall, if you look at the healer balance has been pretty strong. Discipline Priest have or will receive so many nerfs. If I have a look at here, there's a big list of Discipline Priest nerfs happening with 8.1, and a lot of people have been asking me, are Discipline Priests going to be doing well? How Discipline Priests are going to fare against, you know, in raiding scenarios, in Fireman scenarios? It's really hard to say at the moment. I think most of the Discipline Priests or Discipline Priest mains will say that Disc will do well. Disc has been very strong in raiding scenarios and Firemans, in BFA, and this nerf, while substantial, it will still keep Discipline Priests in a good position. I feel the people that will get screwed over by this the most are the new people who start playing Discipline, who are not aware of the fact of how much work it involves to become a good Discipline Priest, knowing damage patterns, knowing when to use the abilities. And I feel those new players who are going to play Discipline Priest will be expecting to see good numbers because they'll see, like, you know, Discipline doing really well. And they'll be disappointed because it requires a lot of knowledge of the class, a lot of knowledge of the fight in order to become a good Discipline Priest. And with these nerfs, they'll probably even see lower numbers, while the really good Discipline Priests will, you know, will still be doing perfectly well. But this is just my assumptions. It's really hard to predict these, but this is getting a huge nerf with 8.1. So we're not sure how this is going to affect the Mythic Plus balance with patch 8.1. Overall, this has been a pretty long video just talking about Mythic Plus. What I really want to hear from you is that, do you enjoy Mythic Plus in BFA? Because overall, I do find that Mythic Plus has been a good addition ever since Legion. It's been an amazing addition to the game. I feel BFA, the type of damage that's happening in Mythic Plus, has been pretty good. I don't mind the loss of one-shot mechanics. I enjoy the Mythic Plus dungeons. There are a couple of dungeons that I really don't like, but most of them I really do enjoy. I would really love to hear your opinion. If you liked Legion dungeons, do you like the dungeons in BFA? Do you enjoy the type of damage patterns that are happening? Because I've heard a lot of mixed opinions about this. Or maybe you have even stopped playing Mythic Plus because you don't like BFA. Or maybe you start pushing Mythic Plus because you want to push your rated.io score and things like that. Please let me know, and thank you guys for watching this video, and hopefully I'll be back in the next couple of days. The stream is coming back up. Hopefully in the next week everything's going to be sorted. Thank you guys for watching this video, and I'll see you in my next guide.